Welcome to this explainer. Look, here is a pretty wild statistic to kick things off. Roughly 90% of people literally never scroll past the first page of search results. Today we're going to unpack something that affects absolutely every professional operating today. We're looking at how the internet defines your professional identity, and more importantly, what you can actually do to control that narrative. Because we live in an era where your digital presence is often your very first impression, and sometimes, well, it's the only one you're ever going to get to make. So we're diving deep into the mechanics of online reputation, looking at search ecosystems and entity credibility to explore exactly how your professional life is being filtered before you even step foot in the room.
So I want you to ask yourself a question. What does a search engine actually think of you? Seriously, take a second and consider that. Before a client, a new colleague, or an executive ever shakes your hand or jumps on a Zoom call with you, a search algorithm has already evaluated your entire digital identity. These algorithms are operating as the ultimate gatekeepers. They decide what information to present to the world based purely on the footprint associated with your name. They are constantly constructing this profile of who you are, pulling from structured data, things like official professional directories, and unstructured data like random forum threads or social media comments floating around the web.
And the harsh reality we're dealing with here is that negative content dictates trust before you even get a chance to speak. Now, we aren't just talking about massive headline-grabbing scandals. Harmful online content can be incredibly mundane. Imagine a frustrated customer's highly exaggerated review from 5 years ago completely overshadowing your recent industry awards. It's that old information, those forum debates, or just slightly misleading social posts that search engines actively index. If the overall sentiment across your search results leans negative, that third-party information is actively shaping user perception. It alters your reputation signals, and it fundamentally changes how much trust people place in you, entirely sight unseen.
It's actually kind of fascinating, and maybe a little scary, to track the exact life cycle of a digital crisis. Think about how a single piece of harmful content travels from publication to actively damaging your public perception. First, a negative review or a misleading article goes live. That's the initial publication. Almost instantly, search engines crawl the web, index that content, and file it away. But the real danger kicks in at step 3, association. The algorithm forever links your specific name to that event or controversy. Once that connection is hardwired, the content achieves visibility. It ranks directly on the search engine results page when someone looks you up. Ultimately, it ends with user perception. By the time someone clicks that link, the damage is completely done. Your reputation has just been evaluated and scored by the user based entirely on what the machine decided to serve them.
To really wrap our heads around how this works, we've got to talk about entity credibility. Honestly, think of entity credibility as your digital credit score. If you pay your bills on time across all your different banks, your financial score is high, right? Well, in the digital world, if your professional history is reliable and consistent across various platforms, search engines trust you. They construct an understanding of an entity, that's you, based on the balance of positive and negative reputation signals. If there's a bunch of contradictory information out there, or if negative signals are dominating your search results, your digital credit score just plummets. It creates this massive informational gap, and frankly, that is exactly where negative material loves to set up camp and thrive. So, how exactly does the machine decide what goes at the absolute top? Well, algorithms do not have a moral compass. They don't care about fairness, and they certainly don't judge content based on whether it's morally positive or negative for your career. They care strictly about metrics. They rank content based on its relevance to the search query, the domain authority of the publisher, the freshness of the information, and overall user engagement. So if a highly critical article is published on a major authoritative news site, gets clicked on a ton, and accumulates backlinks, the algorithm just sees massive engagement and authority. Because of those strong trust signals, that harmful content is naturally going to rise to the very top of your search results, becoming incredibly difficult to displace.
Section: The Interventions, Tactical Choices for Crisis Management.
All right, now that we understand the mechanics of how search engines evaluate your entity credibility, how do professionals actually fight back when they're faced with a digital crisis? Generally, we're looking at 2 main tactical choices: content removal versus content suppression. Content removal is exactly what it sounds like. It directly eliminates the harmful material from the search ecosystem entirely. You request deletion through publishers, admins, or legal mechanisms. And if it works, it's a permanent fix. The problem, though, is that authoritative publishers frequently reject these requests unless you have strict legal justification like a court order for defamation. It is highly limited by platform policies and, honestly, exorbitant legal fees. Content suppression, on the other hand, reduces the visibility of that harmful content by increasing the prominence of alternative, highly authoritative information. You are essentially drowning out the negative results with optimized, powerful assets that compete for those exact same search rankings.
But timing is absolutely everything here, which leads us directly into reactive versus proactive management. Reactive management is waiting for a problem to appear, suffering the reputational damage, and then frantically trying to recover. Think about the sheer cost in time, money, and just immense stress this requires. By the time you react, the negative content has already accumulated authority, and those negative entity associations are already hardwired into the algorithm. Proactive management, however, gives you peace of mind. It's all about establishing a protective digital fortress before a crisis ever hits. It operates by continuously building authoritative digital assets so that if negative content does pop up, there simply isn't any room for it to rank on the first page of your search results.
When we take a step back and stack these strategies side by side, the data reveals a pretty clear winner. Removal might sound fantastic because it's immediate if successful, but its scalability is heavily limited by those legal constraints we just talked about, leaving its long-term resilience incredibly low. Suppression? It takes gradual time, but has much broader applicability, giving you medium resilience. But look at proactive building. It requires continuous effort, sure, but it offers the absolute highest scalability and the strongest long-term resilience. The data is clear on this. Continuous optimization significantly outperforms temporary, stressful, reactive interventions. Section: Building the ecosystem. Proactive digital footprint optimization. Okay, so let's pivot from mere tactics to the proactive mindset shift required to actually achieve this kind of resilience. It is time to stop thinking about a single profile and start thinking about a networked digital presence. To do this, you need a diversified footprint built on essential assets: a professional website, a robust LinkedIn profile, author profiles, industry publications, media mentions, and professional directories. Relying on a single platform creates an incredibly high level of risk. I mean, if all your credibility lives on one site, you are completely vulnerable to a single negative attack or even just an algorithmic shift. But a distributed ecosystem? That guarantees resilience. For instance, LinkedIn carries massive domain authority straight out of the box, while a personal professional website gives you total control over the narrative. You're creating multiple sources of high-authority truth that search engines can index, connecting everything back to one central, credible identity.
Search systems actually evaluate trust through a very specific distribution of signals. To put this into perspective, roughly 30% of your credibility comes from verified profiles. Another solid quarter comes directly from media mentions. Then, 25% relies on consistent data across the web, and the remaining 20% is built on citations. When you actively align your professional information across all these multiple authoritative sources, you establish incredibly strong trust signals. It proves to the algorithm that your entity is reliable. And by maintaining this specific balance, you effectively dilute the influence of any isolated harmful content. You aren't just pushing the bad stuff down, you're literally raising the structural integrity of your entire digital name.
There is a really powerful insight from the research that beautifully summarizes everything we've covered today. Search results act as a reputation interface. Users do not dig through pages and pages of search results to find the nuanced truth about you. They just don't. They form their initial impressions and make highly consequential decisions based on what appears right near the top. Controlling the composition of those top results isn't about vanity at all. It is fundamentally about risk reduction and controlling the very interface through which the modern professional world interacts with you.
Which brings us to the ultimate takeaway for this explainer. You have got to take control of your digital narrative. You can actually learn a lot more about the actionable frameworks for doing this by checking out www.clearmyname.org. The days of leaving your professional reputation to the whim of a search algorithm are completely over. You have the tools to build a proactive digital footprint, to manage your entity credibility, and to ensure that when someone searches your name, they see the professional reality you've built, not some skewed narrative shaped by isolated, harmful content. So I'll leave you with this final thought. If someone were to search your name right now, what interface are they interacting with, and are you the one who actually built it?